41 years of sawdust under my fingernails, and I never once thought the thing I built would be the thing that ended a man's career. But here we are. My name is Ray Harmon, 63 years old, retired master carpenter. Kitchens, staircases, nursery pieces, custom cabinetry for people who understand that furniture is not something you buy and something you inherit. I spent 4 decades building things in Knoxville, Tennessee that will outlast me by 100 years. I know this because I built some of them for people who are already gone, and the work is still standing. That's the whole point of the work. I live on North Street in the 4th and Jill neighborhood, the east side of Knoxville, old Victorian houses and mature oaks, the kind of street where people still wave from the porch, and your neighbors know your truck on sound alone. My wife Carol has been the elementary school librarian at Beaumont Magnet for 31 years. We raised one daughter in this house, Callie, 31 years old, pediatric occupational therapist, married 2 years ago to a man named Tyler Wells, who works in commercial real estate and has the specific confidence of a man who has never once been wrong about anything in his own estimation. I want to be fair about Tyler before I tell you what happened. He is not a stupid man. He is organized, ambitious, well-dressed, and good at his job. He has attended every family dinner for 2 years with a handshake ready and a compliment prepared, and the particular attentiveness of someone who wants something from you and has decided that warmth is the most efficient instrument for getting it. I noticed all of this. I filed it under "Give him time" and kept building furniture. 9 months before the baby shower, I started the cradle. Cherry wood, the same species, the same joinery, the same hand-carved detail on the hood as the cradle I made for Callie when she was born 31 years ago. That cradle is still in the attic on North Street. Still solid, still level. Cherry wood held together with mortise and tenon joints that don't require glue, because when you cut them correctly, they don't need it. When I pulled the original down from the attic to measure it before I started the new one, I ran my hand along the rail, and the finish was still smooth. 31 years, not one loose joint. I worked on it every Sunday morning, 4 hours, sometimes 5. I didn't tell anyone how long it was taking because that is not information that needs to be shared. The time a craftsman spends on a piece is between him and the piece. Carol knew. She brings coffee to the workshop door on Sunday mornings and sets it on the ledge without coming in, because she has been married to me long enough to know that the workshop on Sunday mornings is not a social space. She knocked twice the whole 9 months, once to tell me Callie called, once to tell me dinner was ready. I finished it on Thursday, April 10th, 2 days before the shower. I sanded it to 220 grit, applied 3 coats of food-safe Danish oil, and let the last coat cure overnight. Friday morning I loaded it into the truck bed, wrapped in the moving blanket I've used for 30 years, and drove it back to the workshop just to look at it in the light one more time. It was the finest thing I had made in 41 years. I knew that when I was making it, and I knew it when it was done. Saturday morning I loaded it again. Carol wore the blue dress she saves for things that matter. We drove to Callie and Tyler's house in Sequoia Hills, the good neighborhood, the one with the river views, and I carried the cradle inside and set it up in the living room before any of the other guests arrived, because I wanted Callie to see it first, by herself, before 40 people were watching. She cried. The specific, quiet kind of crying that doesn't make a sound. She put both hands on the rail and looked at the carving on the hood, the same detail as the one from her own cradle, the one she slept in as a baby, the one in our attic, and she said, "Dad." "It's the same wood," I said. Same joints, different hands. She hugged me, long enough that I knew it was real and not just the gesture of the occasion. I did not know yet that in approximately 4 hours that same cradle would be picked up by one rocker, by a man who held it the way you pick up a piece of furniture to check the price tag, and dismissed in front of 40 people with 8 words that would cost him 14 months of work. I didn't know. So I got myself a coffee and went to talk to Carol's brother Dave, who had driven up from Chattanooga and wanted to tell me about a deck he was building. The shower was the usual production, pastel decorations, a tower of gift-wrap boxes, Callie's friends and Tyler's family occupying opposite sides of the room in the specific, politely territorial way of people at events where they don't yet know each other well enough to fight. Carol circulated. I stood with Dave near the kitchen and ate the good cheese and watched my daughter open gifts. The cradle sat on the floor beside Callie's chair throughout the opening. I noticed people looking at it. The women mostly. They came over in ones and twos, ran their hands along the rail, asked Callie where she got it. She told them. They looked at me. I nodded. The work speaks. I don't need to. Tyler had been moving through the room the way he always moves through rooms, with the kinetic sociability of a man who treats every gathering as a networking event. He shook hands, told a joke I didn't hear the punchline to, refreshed his drink twice. He had not yet looked directly at the cradle. Then the gifts were mostly opened, and there was that natural lull in a shower when people stand up and refill plates, and the afternoon light shifts, and everyone is slightly relaxed. Tyler came and stood near Callie's chair. He looked at the cradle for the first time with full attention. He picked it up by one rocker. The way you hold a piece of furniture when you're checking the construction and you don't know the person who built it is standing 6 feet away. He turned it over, looked at the bottom, set it back down with a thud that was not quite careless, but was not careful either. The thud of a man who has assessed something and decided it doesn't require delicacy. Then he turned to Callie, full voice, relaxed, the tone of a man having a private conversation in a room he has decided is listening to other things, and said, "Babe, we already ordered the Pottery Barn one. Where are we supposed to put your dad's woodshop project?" The laughter came from his side of the room. 3 seconds of it. Maybe 4. His fraternity brother. The guy from his office. A woman I didn't recognize who was looking at Tyler rather than at what Tyler was looking at. Callie's face did something I have only seen it do twice in her life. Both times were when she knew she had done something wrong and couldn't figure out how to undo it in time. She looked at me. I was already looking at her. She didn't say a word. Not that's not just a project. Not do you know how long he spent on that. Not Tyler. Nothing. The silence of a woman caught between the man she married and the man who built her. I want to be precise about what I felt in that moment. Not rage. Rage is for people who are surprised. I was not surprised. I was measuring. The way you measure a piece of wood before you cut it, not angrily, not quickly, carefully, because the cut only happens once. I set down my coffee cup, walked to the cradle, picked it up the correct way. Both hands, from the base, the way you carry something that has weight and value. Walked through the living room to the front door. No performance, no announcement. The steady, unhurried walk of a man who knows exactly where he is going. Carol was beside me before I reached the truck. She didn't say anything. She opened the tailgate. I loaded the cradle, covered it with the moving blanket, closed the tailgate, got in the truck. Carol got in the passenger seat. Neither of us spoke until we were on Kingston Pike. "He doesn't know," Carol said. "Know what?" "What you own." I drove home to 4th and Gill, put the cradle in the workshop, covered it with the canvas drop cloth, made dinner. Callie called twice before I pulled into the driveway. I let both go to voicemail. I didn't listen to them until the following morning, by which point I had already made the call that mattered. Welcome back to Sweet Family Revenge. Grab your snacks, get comfortable, and remember, the people in these stories had every chance to behave themselves. They just chose wrong. Drop a comment and subscribe. You're going to love it here. Let me tell you about the Harmon Street property. My father built 2 commercial buildings on Market Square in downtown Knoxville in the 1970s. He was a carpenter too, the kind who understood that the most stable investment a working man can make is something he can walk to and put his hands on. He paid them off before I was 20. When he died, they came to me. Both buildings, both debt-free, both on Market Square, which has become, in the 40 years since my father bought there, one of the most valuable commercial corridors in East Tennessee. I don't talk about the properties. I own them the same way I own my tools. They are instruments I use to do work, not things I discuss at dinner parties to establish my position in a room. Tyler had been attending family dinners for 2 years. He had been to the workshop. He had seen the truck, the work boots, the flannel shirts, the hands that looked like hands that have been in contact with wood for 4 decades. He had never once asked me what I did before I retired. Not once. The Harmon Street building, the larger of the 2, 6,000 square feet of ground floor commercial space with 4 office suites above, had been empty for 18 months when Tyler's firm Meridian Property Group submitted a leasing inquiry in January of last year. The inquiry came through my property manager, a steady man named Pete Grady, who forwarded it with a note that said, "Ray, this is Tyler's company. Thought you should know before I respond." I told Pete to respond normally, to treat it like any other inquiry, because at the time, It was any other inquiry. Tyler hadn't done anything yet except marry my daughter and sit at my table and eat my wife's cooking, and ask me questions about the Vols with the slightly too deliberate interest of someone who had done research. The lease negotiation ran for 14 months, 6,000 square feet, 10-year term, full triple net. The numbers worked. Tyler was the lead agent. He attended every site visit. He brought his managing broker, Greg Holt, to 2 of them. They were professional, prepared, and persistent in the way of people who want something and are willing to wait for it. Tyler had the commission from that deal projected at $96,000. I know this because Greg Holt told Pete, and Pete told me, and I filed it in the back of my mind the way I file measurements I might need later. Tyler Wells had spent 14 months in careful proximity to his father-in-law, specifically because he needed his father-in-law's signature on a lease. And in 4 hours at a baby shower, he threw it away for a laugh from his fraternity brother. What he called a woodshop project was worth, in his own math, $96,000. I didn't know that yet on Saturday night. I only knew what I'd seen, but what I'd seen was enough. Sunday morning, 8:14 a.m. Coffee on the kitchen table in 4th and Gill. Carol asleep. Workshop quiet. I called Donna Pratt. Donna Pratt has been doing commercial property law in Knoxville for 20 years. She is 61 years old, graduated first in her law school class, and has the specific, unhurried precision of a person who has made very important phone calls on Sunday mornings before, and does not treat the weekend as a barrier to doing things correctly. She picked up on the second ring. Ray, Donna, the Harmon Street property. Pull it from all active negotiations. Effective today. A pause. Not surprise. Donna Pratt doesn't do surprise. The pause of a woman who is already running the calculation. Meridian has been the lead on that listing for 14 months. I know. Their agent is... I know who their agent is, Donna. Another pause. Shorter? Reason for the withdrawal? Owner has decided not to lease at this time. Ray, legally that's sufficient. Personally, that's the reason. She was quiet for 3 seconds. The 3 seconds of a woman who has known me long enough to ask the next question and wise enough not to. I'll send the withdrawal notice Monday morning. Thank you, Donna. One more thing. Yeah. The other property. We leaving that in play? For now. I hung up. Made a second cup of coffee. Sat at the kitchen table and looked at the workshop through the back window. The canvas dropcloth was visible through the glass. Sunday morning light, the specific pale April kind that comes in low and warm through the east-facing windows of old Knoxville houses. I want to be honest with you about something. What I did was not hot anger. Hot anger makes noise. Hot anger drives to Sequoia Hills and says things in driveways. What I did was cold arithmetic, the kind you do at a workbench when you are measuring a cut and you know that a mistake at this stage costs you the whole piece. Tyler had dismissed the work. I had noted the dismissal. I was adjusting accordingly. That is not revenge. That is simply what you do when you discover that a tool has been misused. Carol came downstairs at 9:15, poured her coffee, sat across from me, looked at my face. You called Donna, she said, not a question. Sunday morning. Looked at the workshop window the same way I had. He's going to figure it out eventually. Eventually? Callie? The freeze, the silence, the specific expression of a woman who chose the wrong side of a moment and felt it happen in real time. Callie's going to figure it out first, I said. She's smart. Always was. Carol was quiet for a moment. You're not going to call her, not yet. Ray, she knows where to find me, Carol. She always has. Monday morning, Donna's assistant, Seth, a composed, meticulous young man who has worked in her office for 6 years and processes the unexpected with the particular even-handedness of someone who has seen most things, walked into Donna's office at 9:47 a.m. carrying the Harmon Street file. Miss Pratt. Morning, Seth. The withdrawal notice for Harmon Street. He set the file on her desk. The lead agent on the active negotiation. A pause. His last name is Wells. Donna looked up from her computer. I know Seth. He's married to... I know. Seth put the file on her desk and left. Donna sent the withdrawal notice at 10:03 a.m. By 11:15 it had been received, logged, and routed to Greg Holt's desk at Meridian Property Group. I know this because Donna called me at noon to confirm. Done, she said. Thank you. Greg Holt is going to call Pete Grady. Pete knows to route everything through you. I know. I'm letting you know what's coming. A pause. Ray, when this gets back to Tyler, and it will, what do you want him to know? Nothing, I said. I want him to know nothing. If you've been listening for a while and want stories like this to keep coming, it really helps if you hit that like button and subscribe. 97% of people never do, but it's what keeps this whole thing running. So thank you, for real. Greg Holt called Tyler into his office on Tuesday afternoon. I was not in that office. I don't know the exact words. What I know is what Tyler told Callie that night, which Callie told me 3 weeks later. Greg sat him down and said the Harmon Street withdrawal had come through without warning and without a named reason, and asked Tyler directly whether anything had happened in the last week that might explain why a 40-year client relationship had suddenly gone cold. Tyler said he had no idea. This was, Callie told me, the first entirely true statement Tyler had made about me in 14 months. Greg restructured Tyler's pipeline review. The $96,000 commission, the one that had been sitting in Tyler's projection spreadsheet for 14 months like a down payment on a next-level life, did not materialize. The performance review that had been described in Tyler's last evaluation as on track for senior broker promotion was postponed pending a reassessment of active listing portfolio value. Tyler did not call me, did not come to the house, did not text. He either hadn't connected the timeline yet, or he had and was smart enough to know that calling would confirm it. I gave him credit for the second possibility. A man who has spent 14 months in careful proximity to a target doesn't make panicked moves. Wednesday evening, Carol made her pot roast. The good one, the one with the cipollini onions. And we ate dinner in the Fourth and Gill kitchen, and talked about Dave's deck project and the magnolias coming in on the street, and the Vols spring roster and everything except the Harmon Street property, and Tyler Wells and the 8 words that had cost a man $96,000, and his shot at senior broker. After dinner, I went to the workshop, took the canvas drop cloth off the cradle, looked at it in the workshop light. Cherry wood, 3 coats of Danish oil, mortise and tenon joints that didn't need glue because I cut them correctly. The hand-carved detail on the hood, the same pattern as the one upstairs in the attic, the one Callie slept in 31 years ago. I put my hand on the rail and gave it one slow rock. Level. Of course it was level. I leveled it before I brought it to the shower. I covered it back up and went inside. 3 weeks after the shower, Tuesday, May 6th, Callie called. Not from a friend's phone. Not blocked. Her own number, which told me she had made a decision before she dialed and was not going to unmake it when I picked up. I was in the workshop sanding a cabinet door, turned off the sander. Picked up. Dad. Hey, Cal. The pause of a woman who has rehearsed an opening and found it insufficient now that the moment is here. Did you pull the Harmon Street property because of what Tyler said at the shower? I set down the sanding block. The workshop was quiet. Afternoon light through the single west-facing window. The cradle under the canvas drop cloth in the corner. I pulled it because I realized I'd been doing business with people who don't respect the work, I said. I don't do that anymore. A long silence. Long enough that I wondered if she'd put the phone down. That's not an answer, Dad. It's the only one I've got. Another silence. Different quality. The silence of a woman processing 2 things at the same time and not yet sure which one to address. He didn't know about the property, she said. About what you own. He didn't. Callie. He would never have. Callie. He picked up a piece of cherry wood that took 9 months and held it like a garage sale item and said Woodshop project in front of 40 people. Whether he knew about the property or not doesn't change what he thought of the work. The silence this time was the longest one. I didn't say anything, she said. Quietly. Not as an accusation. As a confession. I know. I should have. Yeah. The silence after that was not uncomfortable. It was the specific silence of 2 people who understand each other and don't require the full sentence. Is the cradle still at the house? She asked. In the workshop. A pause. Okay. I'll call you later this week. I'll be here. She hung up. I picked up the sanding block. Turned the sander back on. The cabinet door was not going to finish itself. Here is what I have learned in 41 years of building things. The work outlasts the argument. Every single time. The cabinet you built for people who were fighting about the kitchen renovation is still in that kitchen 20 years later. The staircase you made for the family that sold the house in a bitter divorce is still the first thing you see when you walk in the front door. The work doesn't care about the argument. It just stands there, level and solid, doing its job, long after everyone involved has forgotten what they were angry about. Tyler did not call me for 3 weeks after Callie's call. I did not expect him to. Tyler Wells is a man who calculates before he moves, and he was still calculating, trying to determine what I knew, what I could prove. Whether the withdrawal was coincidence or consequence, whether approaching me would confirm his suspicion or give him room to manage the damage. I had spent 14 months watching him work. I recognized the process. He called on a Thursday afternoon in late May. I was pulling weeds in the garden behind the workshop, the one that hadn't been properly tended since before Carol retired, the one I had been meaning to address for 4 years and was finally addressing because I had run out of excuses. I let it ring twice, then answered, "Tyler." A pause, the pause of a man who expected voicemail and is recalibrating. "Ray. Hey. How are you doing?" "Fine. Pulling weeds. What do you need, Tyler?" Another pause. Shorter. I've been meaning to call. About the shower. I think I may have said something that, "You called my work a woodshop project in front of 40 people, I said. "That's what you said." Silence. "It was." He stopped, started again. "I didn't mean it the way." "Tyler." My voice was level, the same voice I use in the workshop when I need to stop and assess before I continue. "I'm going to say one thing, and then I'm going to go back to my garden." "Okay. You spent 14 months at my dinner table. You came to the workshop twice. You saw the truck, the tools, the work. In 14 months you never once asked me what I built, or what I owned, or what my name meant in this city. You decided what I was by looking at my hands and my clothes, and you said what you actually thought in front of 40 people at my daughter's baby shower." A pause. "That's not something I can undo, and it's not something you can apologize into a different shape." Silence. Long enough that I thought the call had dropped. "The Harmon Street property," Tyler said quietly. Not a question. Just the name, said out loud the way a man says the name of the thing he has been turning over in his mind for 3 weeks, and finally says aloud because saying it is the only way to know if it's real. "That's a business matter," I said. "Between me and my attorney, Ray, take care of my daughter, Tyler." I said it plainly. "Take care of that baby, do those 2 things, and we'll have something to talk about. Don't do them, and we won't." I hung up, went back to the weeding. The garden was in better shape than I expected. The roses Carol planted the year Callie was born had come back strong. The clematis on the workshop wall was blooming for the first time in 3 years. Things tend to come back if you leave them alone long enough and then put the work in when the season is right. I didn't know yet that Callie had already made the call that mattered more than mine. If you've made it this far, do us one quick favor. Subscribe. A lot of people watch without ever doing it, but it costs you nothing and means everything to us. Thank you, genuinely. What Callie did? I found out later, from Carol, who found out from Callie the way Carol always finds things out, through the particular, patient attentiveness of a woman who has been listening to her daughter's voice for 31 years and knows exactly when it is carrying more than the words contain. Was sit Tyler down the week after she called me, not to confront him, not to argue, to explain. She explained what the Harmon Street building was, what Market Square was, what it meant that my name was on the deed to 2 commercial properties in downtown Knoxville that had been debt-free since before Tyler was born. She explained the 14 months, what Greg Holt had assigned him, what the commission was, what a senior broker promotion at Meridian required. She explained that Tyler had spent 14 months at her father's dinner table specifically because he needed her father's signature on a lease, and had never once thought to ask her father a direct question about his life. Tyler was quiet for a long time after that. Callie told Carol, and then he said, "I thought he was just a carpenter." And Callie said, "He is just a carpenter, Tyler." That's exactly what he is, the carpenter who owns Market Square. I don't know what Tyler did with that conversation. I know what he didn't do. He didn't call Greg Holt and ask him to reopen negotiations. He didn't send me a letter. He didn't show up at the house. What he did, as far as I can tell, is go to work every day and try to rebuild a pipeline he had spent 14 months constructing around a single deal that was no longer available to him. That is probably the right call. I respect the right call, even when it comes late. 6 weeks after the baby was born, a girl, 7 pounds 4 ounces. June 1st, Callie called me from the delivery room, and I drove to the hospital in the Fourth and Gill truck with the sawdust still on the floor mats. Callie called again on a Saturday morning. Dad, is the cradle still at the house? In the workshop. Can I come get it? I'll bring it. I loaded it myself. The moving blanket. The truck. The drive to Sequoia Hills through a Saturday morning in June that was doing what Knoxville Junes do. Warm already at 9 a.m. The river visible between the houses on the ridge, the city below it doing its slow summer waking. Tyler was not home. I don't know if that was arranged or accidental. I did not ask. Callie met me at the door. She looked like a woman who had been awake for 6 weeks and had made a decision somewhere in those 6 weeks to be awake differently than she had been awake before, with a specific, clear-eyed tiredness that is the opposite of beaten. She looked like her mother. She looked like me. She held the door while I carried the cradle up the stairs. The nursery was at the end of the hall, soft yellow walls. The Pottery Barn one, the one Tyler had referenced at the shower, was in the corner, still in its box, partially assembled. I noted this without comment. I set the cherry wood cradle in the center of the room, took my level from my jacket pocket. I had brought it, of course, the same 6-inch torpedo level I have carried in a jacket pocket for 20 years the way some men carry a phone, and checked the floor. The hardwood ran slightly toward the east window. I took the small folded piece of leather I keep with the level and tucked it under the left rear foot. Checked again. Level. I put the level back in my pocket, put my hand on the side rail, gave it one slow rock. The motion was even and smooth, the joints held. The cherry wood caught the morning light from the east window the same way cherry wood always catches morning light. Warm, deep, the color of something that has been around long enough to deserve to be called beautiful. I stood there for a moment with my hand on the rail of a cradle I had built for my daughter's daughter, built from the same wood and the same joints as the cradle I built for my daughter 31 years ago, both of which would outlast me and Tyler and every argument that ever happened in any room either of them ever occupied. The work stands. It always does. That's the whole point of the work. Callie was in the doorway. She had been watching me check the level the way she used to watch me work in the workshop when she was small. Not to help, just to watch. I don't know when she stopped doing that. Somewhere between 14 and the wedding, probably. I noticed when it stopped. I didn't say anything about those things. Cherry wood, I said. Same as the one I made when you were born. That one's still in the attic. She started crying, the quiet kind. No sound. Just her face doing the thing it does when something real gets through the layers. I picked up the moving blanket from the floor, folded it, tucked it under my arm. Call me when she wakes up, I said. I will. I'll bring the other one down from the attic, when she's ready. Something to tell her about someday. Callie looked at the cradle, then at me. The expression of a woman who has spent 6 weeks recalibrating something and has finally found the level. Dad, yeah. I should have said something. At the shower, I looked at my daughter in the doorway of the nursery she had made for her daughter, at the window light on the cherry wood, at the level line of the rocker on the hardwood floor. You're saying it now, I said. She nodded. That was enough. It always was. I went down the stairs, out the front door, and drove home to Fourth and Gill through the June morning with the moving blanket on the passenger seat, and the level in my jacket pocket, and the workshop waiting, and the roses coming in strong, and the clematis on the wall doing what clematis does, when you finally get around to taking care of it. Tyler Wells called his work a woodshop project and lost $96,000 and a senior broker promotion he'd spent 14 months building. He learned what I owned about 48 hours too late, and understood what I valued about 6 weeks after that. I built a cherry wood cradle in 9 months on Sunday mornings in a workshop in Knoxville, Tennessee. It is level. It will last 100 years. It will be in that nursery long after Tyler's commission projections and Greg Holt's pipeline reviews and every Pottery Barn box that was ever assembled in that corner are all equally forgotten. I didn't need him to know what I was worth. The cradle already knew.